Welcome. I'm really excited to be here tonight. You can see I am joined by Alex Gellman. She's up on the screen here. I'll introduce our topic and introduce her a little bit more, but I think most of you know why we're here. I'm really excited for this next couple of hours that we're going to spend together. And Alex is here to talk to us all about iridology. So she'll be going through not only a bit of an overview so you understand what iridology is, how you could use it as a tool in your practice, but you're also going to get a sneak peek into my eyes as well. So Alex will do that as a bit of a demonstration to show you the different types of insights that you can gather using iridology in practice. So she and I have met before. And she looked through my eyes and she found all kinds of stuff that I had to dig deep in my brain to even remember about. And so I'm sure we'll talk about some of that here today. So I guess we'll get into it. As I said, we're here to talk about iridology. And Alex practices iridology really interestingly from my perspective, because she's not just focused on the physical, but she's going beyond that into the emotions that people have and their personality types and how this might impact their healing. So I think that'll be really fun for us to learn about here together tonight. And let me do a brief introduction to her here before I'll turn it over and let her get started with the content. So I mentioned that I'm joined here with Alex Gellman. She's a natural wellness and integrative medicine coach, and she offers guidance through workshops, keynote talks, presentations, and one-on-one to boost health naturally. She specializes in teaching trusted, simple approaches to health and nutrition and showing how to improve your life and your longevity in easy and doable steps. She also has a PhD in integrative medicine. She's a registered homeopath, an orthomolecular health practitioner, a behavioral life coach, a holistic nutritionist, among many other things. But she shared with me that one of her proudest accomplishments is that she's one of the only Canadian researchers that has ever been published by an American journal, and that was the Journal of Medicine in Washington for her work with fibromyalgia. So she is a wealth of knowledge. She's got 30 years experience transforming lives, and she's here today to share some of that with us. So thank you for joining us, Alex.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful. Thank you for this honor. Thank you, Veronica.
It will be a great night, I'm sure. So I know I'm going to be sharing slides for you tonight. So I've got those queued up. I can share whenever you're ready. And then just give me little cues when you need me to get to the next slide. So as usual, all you folks who are here, you can see the slides now, I believe. Feel free, use that chat as you've been doing if you have little comments as we go. But if you do have questions, we will have some time for a bit of a Q&A at the end. So you can, you're also welcome to use that Q&A box here on Zoom to make sure that I don't miss a question if you have something important you want to ask. All right, so I think we're good to go, Alex.
Okay, so we're ready. Iridology. First of all, I learned iridology when I was 7. My mother, I'm from Mexico, and my grandmother was a Mexican shaman, Indian, and she taught me iridology when I was 7. Been doing it ever since, a way of life. Okay. And I've taught it to my, my stepdaughter, and she used to be able to do it. The history of iridology started in 1881 with Dr. Ignaz von Pesley. And he was a young internship in medical school, and one day he found an owl with its wounded wing in the forest. He picked up the owl, took it home, and nursed it. And he noticed in those big owl eyes that as the wing healed, the line changed. For the rest of his medical career, he made it a point of looking at people's eyes and documenting people with gallbladder stones, people with heart attacks, people diabetics, people with depression, people with a broken leg, people with thyroid dysfunction. He did this for the rest of his life, and he continued to find patterns that everybody with thyroid had a mark at 3 o'clock in the right and 9 o'clock in the left. Years later, he went to a big medical And Lord and behold, Dr. Gustav had been doing the same research, and they shared their charts and they had the same information. So that's where it comes from. Okay. There are insinuations that it possibly could have come from the time of the Egyptians, but it's actually quite vague. Okay. All right. Next. Okay. We can keep going. Okay. So you read this like a clock. I did buy fancy machines and photographs and all that fancy software that you basically take the picture of the eye and it would do a printout and tell you everything that's wrong with every organ. I found it didn't work for me. It made it too scientific. Okay, there are potential clients who contact me, and that's exactly what they're looking for. And I say to them, I'm not the person for you. I've gone back to my very old-fashioned style. They said, I look at your eyes with my tiny little flashlight or my iPhone, and I just, a couple of crayons, a couple of markers. I mark all the eye up and what's significant, and it allows me to look into your eyes and see your soul. If I have the camera do that, I'm dealing with analyticals. There's tension in the thoracic third vertebrae and the this and the inner thigh, all the technical scientific pieces. Okay, so again, just giving you it, other people it may be for them, but it did not work for me. Okay, so here's the map. So what we're basically reading is a fiber. So think of it like clothing, okay? So we have fiber that's very, very fine together. There's no space in between the fiber. Think of that as silk. There's no holes. Think of something like burlap that you've got holes like crocheting, okay? So that is going to tell me about your constitution. The more holes that they are in the fiber, the more health weaknesses in the constitution. However, there is a flip to this. The more holes that there are in the fiber, the easier for the client to process emotions. The people with the fiber that is the silk, that is all tight, there's no spaces in between, they tend to perhaps be quite uptight and push down all their feelings. And then we're dealing with other problems later. Okay. The thing about iridology that it gets a lot of bad rap is that there's no healthy eye. Okay. Next. Okay. So basically, what does iridology tell you? Probably the biggest thing it tells you is your hereditary factors. I can look at an eye and I'll say, I see, okay, let's look at this eye. And for this purposes, let's pretend that eye is the left eye. So do you see the concentration of color at 3 p.m. in that eye? See that, everybody? So that's going to tell me, I'm going to say to the client, is there cardiovascular weaknesses in the family tree? And they would say yes or no, or possibly, but then I'm also, everything I'm looking at, and I know whichever nutrition school you all went to, I went to IHN. We have the wonderful course that we deal with the spiritual, emotional aspect of health. So every organ has an emotion. So I'm looking at that mark. You see that marking, how it looks like it's almost 2 blue dots right there. You got, thank you, Veronica, right there. Dot 1, dot 2. I would say to this person, I see 2 significant markings in the emotional heart. Was there 2 significant disappointments or losses or unmet expectations to do with women? The left eye signifies the yin side, so it's the female - women. Sometimes, things can be reversed. That's okay. So let's jump over to the other side. 9, kind of like right there. That's it. 9 o'clock, right there. I work in a medical practice with a team of medical doctors. I receive many, many referrals on a regular basis because they're dealing with patients that whatever their malady is that they're challenged with. The most popular one is they can't lose weight, migraines, digestion, fertility, menstrual, menopause, whatever the problem is. and they have perfect blood work. Dr. Markovitz that I work with, she will say to me, my hands are tied. There is nothing. What am I going to do? Put them on an antidepressant. And I will look at that eye, and right there, go back to that marking there, Veronica, that 9 o'clock where you were, right there, and right above it, that is the thyroid. I think the greatest thing we learn in nutritional school is that the thyroid is the most misdiagnosed organ or condition of all time. And I know you could do the body temperature test, but I've had people do the body temperature test and it comes out perfect, as you all know. It just slips through the cracks, and that thyroid needs to be addressed. Okay. I mean, I'm a big fan of the NutriBody tool, and because it often will reveal some of these underlying factors that, again, mainstream medical tests will not reveal. Okay. The other one that I will touch on this picture, do you see the concentration of orange brown directly around the pupil? Right there, all around that. That is telling me that there is tremendous dysbiosis of the bowel. It could be pathogens, whether it's bacteria, fungus, candida, parasites, all of the above. It also tells me, and that's one that 90% of the time it is confirmed by the client, that there is somebody in the family genetics. Again, if it's in the right eye, it's coming from the father's side of the family. If it's in the left eye, it's coming from the mother's side of the family, that there is diabetes, diabetic predisposition in the family tree. Like I'm saying, 90% of the clients will confirm that. There is a small 10-20% that will not. And I would say those clients, I will say the thing about iridology, and it is debatable whether it's actually showing the genetic patterns 5 generations back or 7 generations back. The genetic predispositions are probably an incredibly wonderful tool when you're dealing with a client who is adopted and does not know the birth parents, what they're dealing with. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, Jessica saying when you refer to left and right, I can't read the rest. What does it say?
It says when you refer to left and right, do you mean the person's left, or when you're looking at them, it's on your left?
So it would be the client's right eye. Yep. And the client's left eye. Correct. Thank you. Okay, most of this we've touched on. So basically, you're looking at the state of the organs. It does not, I mean, the one you've always got to be careful with, do I have cancer? Iridology does not diagnose, or it does not give a label to a condition. I see that the tissue of the body is significantly deteriorate. I don't use that with the client deteriorated, but I've got one new client I just started working with. I'm seeing her again next Monday. I don't usually have cases like this that get jammed, but it's part of life. I probably saw her 2 weeks ago. I looked at her eye, and she had studied iridology, interesting enough. So she saw the expression on my face, and she says, I don't like that. I said, well, yeah. I said, it was a gray ring all around the exterior of the eye, which basically means that all of the circulation of the body is shutting down. She has horrific high blood pressure, even with medication. She's at 160 over 100. It's a walking potential stroke. Okay. She's being tested for all kinds of autoimmune conditions. Has had 2 hip replacements, and she's covered in hives all over. Okay. So we have had no improvement. She has not changed her diet, as we all know. She was hoping that just the remedies alone would be able to make all these little hives disappear. So again, I expressed to her that how toxic, I mean, especially because she knew iridology. So let's talk about color. Like I'm saying, iridology gets a lot of bad flack. There's no such thing as a healthy eye. First of all, the majority of Caucasian folks, basically they all come from a blue eye. I have to confess, I'm always transparent. I've never been around a baby, so I cannot swear to this, but I have been told that when a baby is born, Caucasian babies, the eyes are always blue. People can confirm that. If the genetics of the individual are African American or Middle Eastern, Asian, they are a true brown. Even though I do treat a lot of people from India, who are actually the eyes appear to be green, which there's the influence of whether it was the British or whoever, so it brought in the blue eye. So I've got, my health personally has been very, very difficult. I come from probably the worst genetics of all time. Every family member died before like 55. So my eyes actually used to be dark brown. Okay. I'm happy to send you my eyes. They are light green with lots of blue lines coming through. Okay. So I'm actually a blue-eyed person. And then there's on top of, think about watercolor. It's like you put blue, and I've got tons of acid in there. So that turns it green. And then we got another layer of all these toxins that makes the eyes appear dark brown. Okay. So it's very complicated that way. I will tell you that doing the African American, Asian, Middle Eastern true brown eye is really hard because there's no fiber. It's just like sand. There's virtually no markings. I mean, I do manage to get through it, but I'm telling you, it is very difficult. Let's go back 2 slides. I think there was something I can show you. One more. Yes, right there. I've only got one. See the stuff right on the very edge there, Veronica? Go to 9 o'clock, that tiny little dot on the edge, right there below it, right there. That's it. Those little dots will often go, if you look very subtle, they're there. They go all the way around the eye. And that is telling you what's happening with the lymphatic flow. So again, we are reading colors. White is a warning. Yellow, it's moved to an acute. Orange, it's becoming chronic. Brown, we're in trouble. Then it goes red and black. Treated a woman with breast cancer. The breast area was covered with little, brown dots. As she healed and transformed, the little brown dots became orange, then they became yellow, then they became, white. So you can see that evolution. Okay, go back to where we were. Every marking that we read, we're reading the physical marking, and then we're reading the emotional marking. So let's talk about the lymphatic. The lymphatic is the body's plumbing, it's the body's ability to get rid of waste. In the female body, it basically would indicate that female extra weight, basically from the waist down to just below the thighs. Okay, that is lymphatic. And then you get those tiny little circles that appear for the little cellulite. That's your lymphatic congestion. I used to go to a lymphatic massage therapist. My favorite food, one of my favorite foods in the world was Caesar salad. And she would look at my thighs and she says, "You had dairy because you got more cellulite circles." I think since then, I never touched Caesar salad again. It was immediate. I mean, the dairy will, we all know that the dairy just clogs lymphatic. Lymphatic does not respond well to, the white food groups. So every marking that I read in the eye, and you're all going to get your mini sessions, there is what I call the psychospiritual aspect of it. The psychospiritual aspect of the lymphatic, they call it the lymphatic rosary, is all about, you were born to be a healer. You were born to be a facilitator to help people heal, a facilitator to help people process their pain or to help them navigate whatever challenges they have in life. It makes you are a natural healer to humanity. You are what's called the stranger on the train. It's the person that, you sit beside and you tell them your deepest, darkest secrets about what's bothering you, and you probably will never see them again. The downside of the lymphatic rosary on the psychospiritual side is that the person lacks boundaries. So they need to, get that backbone or stand up for themselves and put those boundaries in place. Okay, next. Beep. Again, we technically cannot say to people that we could cure them or heal them, but certainly anything you see in an eye, I wouldn't tell this to people about the cancer woman with the breast cancer, but certainly everything can be helped if people are willing to apply themselves. I want to precursor that, not everything. I Years ago, I had 2 or 3 cancer patients came, and I looked at those eyes, and it was, I'm sorry, I really can't help you. And they said, I'm not looking for you to save my life. All I want to do is have a bowel movement and be able to sleep at night. And I said, I can help you with that. Okay, next. Okay, we've kind of touched on this. We've talked about the right signifies the male energy, the yang energy, and then you then go to the next one. And yeah, the right also is all about it's your yang eye. It's about how you manifest your imprint or your legacy on the world. It's kind of the third chakra. Okay, then we go to the left eye, which is all about your personal personal feelings, emotions. It's about the heart chakra. It's about your creativity and your sexuality. There are wonderful quotes on the eyes from many different spiritual scriptures. Every person has all the information they need to achieve life balance. The Gospel of Matthew says the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. And the most famous one is your eyes, the eyes are the mirror to the soul. They're right there. The next one we have is the face is a picture of the mind, as the eyes are its interpreter. Next. Okay. So like I painted a bit of a grim picture that iridology has got a lot of bad flack. We talked about Gustave and we talked about Pesley, and they created the original map that we read today. That's the what they call the European map. That map was altered by the famous Bernard Jensen in USA, who became probably the most famous iridology teacher and school and so on in the US, in North America. Okay, but like I'm saying, it's a tough tool because there's no such thing as a healthy eye. Denny Ray Johnson came along, in the 60s. He's from Boulder, Colorado, and Sedona, and all those kind of great spiritual places. And he created the emotional iridology because he felt there has to be more to it than the fact that you've got a toxic liver and there's gallbladder problems and you're going to be a diabetic and there's going to be a heart attack. I mean, that's all pretty grim and dark. So next, so he created basically 4 personality types. The analyst, which basically analysts are interesting. We probably don't see a lot of analysts in our practices because they're hardcore scientists. So the analyst is the presence of all those dots. I have managed to have quite a few analysts in my life since I had a lot of corporate speaking engagements I used to do in the banking industry, and most of the banking community is analyst based. So again, if we take a look at this eye, and for purposes, we'll pretend it's the right eye. So if we look at 9 o'clock in that eye, if you do that right there, perfect. So that position in the right eye represents, I'm going to say, the chest area. So if it's a woman, we could be looking at breast, or is it breast - lung? So we've got the physical aspect. I would ask questions like, is there a history of respiratory illness, asthma, emphysema in the family? Are you prone to allergies in the spring and fall? And then we go to what I call the psychospiritual side, which basically I count those dots. Take a look at that. It looks like it's actually 3. Go back to those where you were there, right there. See, you got 1 and then 2, and then there's another one right beside it, 3, and then above you got a darker one right above it, right there. So I would ask, did you, I tend to be, I do my very best to be as diplomatic and sweet as possible. I would ask something to the effect of, did you want to be closer to your father? Or did you want to spend more time with dad when you were growing up? I don't want to blurt it out and say that I've got total and absolute abandonment from father. Okay. Because sometimes I know my own journey, it probably took me, I'm 65 now. I would probably not till I was in my late 40s or 50s that I saw the reality of the rose colored glasses that I saw my family through. So I would not have been ready to look at those sort of things. So we tone it down a little bit, you know, and you read this like a tree. Okay. So if those dots, see that first dot, go back to that first one, that right there, perfect. The first one, the closer it is to the pupil. So we're going to pretend this person's 30. Okay. So if it's really close to the pupil, that's going to tell me that that probably was in the first. We're going to take that space from the pupil to the end of the eye and divide it in half. So I would say that all of these events probably happened prior to the age of 20. So we could probably deduce that father wasn't around, or maybe they were adopted, or father left, or so. Anyway, there was an absence of a significant male, and that could also be the mother, depending on the personalities. And then we've got those two, and then we've got another, that darker one above. That could have been, unfulfilled relationships that didn't work out, or relationships that broke up, and it was a lot of heartache around it. I got to jump and interject. She's probably one of my greatest absolute fans. It's my God. So I had one patient. She was referred by the medical doctor. She's on thyroid medication, but she still was having problems losing weight. I looked at her eye and I said, "What happened in your early 20s that was absolutely heartbreaking to you?" And she goes, "Oh my God, how do you know?" She was the nightmare, every girl's nightmare. She was stood up at the altar. And she didn't date for probably 9 years till she met her present husband, who she loves, but she still pines for the man that never showed up at the altar. So I think at this point I might jump in, because thank you, Veronica, because we need to make this relevant to why, what are the benefits to a nutritionist to incorporate this tool in their practice. And I probably would say that the fact that I have that information on this lady, and I'll just, to use a name, I'll call her Mary. Okay. I'm so aware of the deeper pieces of her life. This isn't just about losing weight. This is about a girl who's grieving somebody who stood her up. She was in love with probably somebody who was probably never emotionally available. And, quite often it's a harsh reality. We attract actually our emotional equal. Okay. So I think it's almost like it speeds up the relationship. I mean, she never in a million years, if I would have just sat across from her at my desk and done a NutriBody and worked through her, through her food choices and her, her diet and her supplements, that sort of information would never, ever come to the forefront. The story goes on that she has tracked him down on Facebook, and now they're communicating. He married somebody else who they are now divorced. So stand by for the next scene. It's like, so when I treat her daughter, I sit there and I think, dear sweet girl, your mother's not present. Your mother's in the clouds, still thinking about the man who, I don't know what it was, 20, 30 years ago stood her up. Isn't that sad? But that's the reality, that otherwise you would never, ever in a million years. They either carry so much shame about these secrets, or quite often I've done it myself when I've gone to healers. I just block it out of my mind. I remember one of the first iridologist I went to that exposed me to the emotional iridology, Joe. He goes, "Well, all your problems are all tied in with your ex-husband." I said, "Oh, but I'm over him. That was 10 years ago." "Oh no, girl, you're not over it at all." Okay. But it speeds up the relationship to another level. It's stuff that never would come to the forefront. Okay. So how do you identify the analyst? It's all those little dots. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so the analysts are driven, they're yang, they excel as leaders, inventors, verbal communicators. They pay attention to detail and clarity. And like I said, they're generally science oriented. They're not fans of stuff they cannot see under a microscope. And again, if you're dealing with an analyst, you've got to really be on your toes because they'll catch you if you make a mistake. The other thing I want to touch on is the personalities. I don't know, personalities are really important in our work. Basically, the analysts love structure. They love a program. They know that tomorrow at 7 a.m., they get up and they do their water with lemon, and then an hour later they do their flax and chia, and then at 8:30 they do this, and then they fast, and their fast is so many hours. Analysts love detail and they love compliance. They love a plan and they're going to follow it to the letter. Okay. We'll go over this. We'll pass on these for now. We may return to them. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so again, the biggest thing about the analyst is they ignore the body. It's the person that, hey, they ignore the body's warning signals. Oh, they pop a couple of Tylenols, they ignore it, the body is screaming. They've got abdominal pain, they've got palpitations, but it's ignored, or they take a pill to cover it up, or they're exhausted, they can't move, but we'll just do a couple more espressos. And then one day they wake up and get a heart attack or whatever. Okay. Next one. And we'll pass on that for now. Catalyst. Okay. Catalysts are identified by that high concentration of orange around the pupil that you can see there. Okay, so for today's purposes, what do we got? Hold on, back one, please. Okay, so let's see. We're gonna say that this eye is we'll make it for today's purposes. We'll go with the right eye. So that concentration of those three little dots that you see there. Okay. So if you were doing the Denny Ray Johnson, who's the emotional creator of the system, he used to call those jewels. Okay. Got us, trying to think the traditional model, the traditional way, the traditional model basically calls it toxic buildups, which sounds pretty horrible. Jewels sounds so much nicer. All right. So in the case of this one there, that area there represents the spine. So I'm going to say to the person, do you find yourself suffering from backaches or low back? So again, the one that is further near the pupil, that would be sort of like the, cervical. And then the middle one would be thoracic. And then the one further down would be more towards the sacrum. And the person may say, yes, I had an accident. It's never been the same. Or I ache or whatever. I go to chiropractic or whatever. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one. So the catalysts are explosive. They make things happen, and sometimes they can have a little bit too much drama. All right. The thing that's very interesting, and go back to the photo there, because again, that's probably another one that's a really, really game changer in your practice. If you see that accumulation of orange, remember we touched on it earlier, that's telling me that there is a tremendous amount of accumulation of, whether we want to call it bacteria, pathogens, candida, fungus, parasite. And it's also telling me that there is a pre-diabetic predisposition with the person. How often do I have people that have that marking? I've known them forever, and then one year they write to me 10 years later, I saw you 10 years ago and I was just diagnosed as a diabetic, and you told me 10 years ago and I thought you were out of your mind. Okay. If you see that concentration of orange, you know what? That person cannot tolerate carbs in any fashion whatsoever. I had one client tell me today, and she says, Alex, I was working with you, it was just recent. It would have been pre-COVID. So 3-4 years ago. She says, I'm up 25 pounds. Oh, but I'm eating so healthy. I said, that sounds great. But how many cupcakes are you eating a day today? Oh, I only have one, but I'm eating really healthy the rest of the day. I said, I've explained to you, you carry a predisposition that your body cannot process sugars and high concentrations of carbs. I've tried to educate her to at least use subtly alternative flours, like maybe spelt or kamut or even oat, but nope, she always just uses white flour. So, I mean, that weight will just come on like there's no tomorrow. I mean, it's explosive, with the white flour, it's your glycemic index. That white flour, that glycemic index goes to the roof, and it makes your inflammatory hormones, and all that fat just builds up. So she's up 25 pounds. She works with a personal trainer twice a week. So she thought she could have, one cupcake a day. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Next. Okay, so the catalyst from perspective of client dash nutritionist, they're hard to pin down. You've got to get them to respect you, because they tend to be a bit of a know-it-all. They're powerful, and they're know-it-all, and angry and dramatic, and they want everything. They want everything immediate, like yesterday. I've been doing this for 3 days. I'm not better. It's not acceptable. Next one. Beep. Okay. The greatest health challenge for a catalyst. I mean, when I'm dealing with a catalyst, I take everything away, and they lose weight. I've got it. She's going through a very difficult time. I'll probably see her next week. She came to see me. She was working out. I'm not kidding you. An hour and a half, 2 hours every day. And she was, the old girl thing, she would skip breakfast, she'd skip dinner. I mean, like, starving herself, wasn't losing any weight. And I actually took away all her workouts. Because the other aspect of that orange concentration around the pupil is that the person is so overextended, so burnt out, there is nothing left in them. Her prescription was 60 days with no workouts, and a very simple little food plan to follow, and eat regular meals. And I think, over the 2 years that she's been on plan, she's probably down 35, 40 pounds. And as you all know, slow weight loss stays off, not the fast weight loss. We all have the clients coming in that did the Bernstein and lost 30 in 2 weeks, and now they gained 50. And again, absolutely, the catalyst, it's about keto or paleo. They cannot tolerate carbohydrates. Next one. Beep. Next. So the catalyst is all about just taking because they love to be busy. They overdo themselves terribly. They know no moderation. Okay, next. Okay, here's a beauty. Do you remember we talked about the fiber at the very beginning? Take a look at that eye. That's the crochet. This person learned how to look at all that crochet. All those holes. So all of those holes would tell me that there's a weakness in that corresponding organ. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, there's a weakness in almost every system going on in that eye structure. Okay, they are emotional. They are oversensitive, but they can process their emotions fairly quickly. Okay, I was hired to do a series of facilitating and workshops for the creators of the AT machines for Scotiabank years ago. Okay. And you know what? I was expecting everybody to come in and have that first eye that we just had with all those little pigment, the toxic pigment dots. All of the participants, and there were about 20, 30 people, they all had this eye structure. And they all operated on, I can't think of what the fancy word is they use in corporate, but they were allowed to create their own hours. What's that, flex plan or whatever it's called?
Yeah, flex time.
Flex time. They would have they would arrive at 5 p.m. and they would work till 5 in the morning, or they would arrive at 11. They were allowed to do that because they were writing the software for all of these, the ATM machines. Okay, so it's the thing about the creative is they do not like to follow rules or a program. They're difficult that way as far as us giving them a plan, whether it's the supplements or the food plan. Next. And again, deep, they got deep empathy. They're teachers, healers. They're all about helping, supporting people. Next. This creative category, okay, is a category that, again, lymphatics, immune system are probably their biggest challenge. They're the ones that they have to get off all the white food groups. Okay, the immunity is probably their biggest health challenge. So they need, naturally who they are, they're artistic. So we need to teach them, focus and detail. So, maybe, I have them do like build model airplanes or needlepoint. They got to do detail, which they don't like. They like big picture and big paintings. Next. Okay, next. Beep. Okay, next. We've done all those. Okay, next. We've done that. Beep. Okay, our last one is the humanitarian. And this is probably the one that I described that looks, like I said, like silk. See the way those fibers are very, very close together. There's hardly any space between them. There's that one there is very, very small. That one you just had your little arrow on, Veronica. It's small. So if we were reading this eye, you've got to see the gradual fluctuation in color that you're seeing in the okay, so some of the participants, give me some numbers. If we were to make this the right eye, tell me a spot where you're seeing a different variation in that coloring. Anybody?
I remember reading it like a clock. So
Yes, that's right. Okay, so hold on, 5 p.m. Let me just take a look at that. Hold on, get rid of that guy. Sure, perfect. Okay, so 5 p.m. Perfect. Now go over to just on the other side, all this section here, all of this section, see all this fiber, how it stands out all there, right there. So all of that, is the, we're going into all of we got liver over here, we've got all the digestive. 9 p.m. 9 p.m. is the, you've got all, again, that would be the lung, lung. And if it's female, we'd be looking at breast or chest. Just below it there, right there, you're just liver, you got liver going into liver, gallbladder, the arms. Okay, so you've got to, it's very subtle. You've got to really develop a very, very keen eye to see that gradual fluctuation. Okay, take a look at 11 o'clock on this eye. Right there, that the right there. Okay, further down, right there, that's the one right there, that I'm looking at, that line. This line there, it goes out to the edge, right there. Okay, further, yeah, it's this one I'm looking at, further. No, towards the other side, right there. Keep going down, 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 and then go out to the edge, right there. You got it. That's it. That's the one I'm looking at. That one is a classic. That is a great one to start with, because you want to show them that you know what you're doing and this isn't like bogus or something. Okay, that one is, the question is, do you carry tension, neck and shoulders? Okay, I would say majority of people, if you see that line, they've got tension, neck and shoulders. And then if we go to the psychospiritual aspect, interpretations from Danny Ray Johnson, it's a very interesting one. The interpretation for that line is, do you know if your father had tension with his father? And then if you flip over to the other side, go to 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock right there is, it kind of further up right there, one more, it's two little lines right there. So that would be like sinus, sinus, ears, eyes, all that area. But psychospiritual for that is, do you know if your father had any tensions or anything unresolved with his mother? And those variables usually, just opens up an entire like floodgate of, oh, well, let me tell you about the blah, 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 blah. Okay, next one. Okay, humanitarian tend to be very analytical. Emotions, they tend to push down. Okay, humanitarian eye will be very, very prone to arthritic type tendencies and acid accumulation. Okay, next one. Okay, next. Next. Okay, next. Okay, let's see what we have here next. Okay, so this was a very, very old case study that I use in some of my presentations. Sharing with a young girl in her mid-20s. She came in to see me, fatigue, constipation, stomach aches, and depression. Eye analysis showed she was a humanitarian with a catalyst constitution. If you have a marking at 6 o'clock in the right or the left eye, each has a slightly different variation, It basically is telling you that the person would be very gifted in either dance, some sort of movement. So could it be dance or it could be sports? Okay. So the eye basically revealed that again there was definite blood sugar problems. So there was the pre-diabetic component with the candida, and her biggest problem was the fact that she just was exhausted all the time. Okay. She, I forget what, she, was, worked at an type of office, clerk type job. And the eye basically showed that she was meant to be a dancer. That was her biggest thing. Okay. So, she had done a lot of dancing in her young years, got to university and kind of stopped doing it. So her homework was to dance once a week. She popped back into my life maybe 5 years later, and a lot of the old ailments were back: fatigue, constipation, stomach aches, depression, fatigue, so on. And again, the big question was, when's the last time you danced? And the answer was not for about 6 months, because we just moved and it's been so stressful and I've been so busy unpacking. So her prescription is to dance once a week for the rest of her life, because that is her passion. It reconnects her. It's her. It opens up all of the blocked energy. Okay. Next one. Okay. 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 I basically next one we did all this. Okay, that's right. She didn't change her career, but she did dancing for the love of her life. Okay, next one. This is okay. Oh yeah, I've done all this. I did it all. Okay, this is probably my absolute favorite. It's a bit of a scary story. Okay, the doctor I worked with, Dr. Markovitz, she basically phoned me and she said she wanted me to come into the office the next day at 7 a.m. And she says, I'm sorry to ask you to do that, but I am truthfully at my wit's end. If you cannot help this young girl who has not come out of her closet and eaten for 30 days, I will need to have her committed to CAMH. So I sat there in front of the young girl and her mother, and I looked at the eyes, and I believe she was 16. Next page. And I said to them, this problem started about 8 years ago. What happened 8 years ago? And they both looked at me with a blank stare and said nothing. And then the mother went, oh my God. That was the year my brother was hit by a drunk driver with his baby, and they both died on impact. She says, you're right. It was so subtle. Amanda cried for months. She was hysterical at the funeral and cried for months afterwards. And it was very, very subtle. She withdrew from all her favorite activities: parties, dances, art, outings, and became more and more recluse in her room. Her appetite decreased, and she started to eat less and less and less. Next page. Okay. So again, part one is the iridology assessment. It's giving us an answer as to what is happening with Amanda, and what do we do about it? I mean, they already had her in therapy, and I mean, this sort of stuff is so buried in our subconscious. We just we disconnect from it, but it is so painful. Okay. I'm so blessed to be a homeopath, because the biggest thing about homeopathy is that it changes behaviors and it heals underlying deep emotional trauma, which is what I treated her with. And you know what? It was just they phoned about 3-4 days later to tell me that she had had 2 consecutive nights of nightmares where she found herself kneeling by the coffins at the funeral home and would wake up terribly distraught and in tears. And that was just the 2 days. The third night was a very odd dream. The third night, she painted all her nails, each nail a different pastel color. And that was it. And after that, she hasn't stopped eating since. And the father, who was not involved in the family dynamics whatsoever, actually made it a point to come in and see me in person and shook my hand. It's Dr. Gellman. Thank you. We have our daughter back. Okay, next. So what have we got? Let's see. So using iridology as a starting point helps patients or clients discover who they are, why they do what they do, and their genetics. I think the biggest thing, it's also for us to understand how they're wired. I've got to work that much harder when I'm dealing with people who don't take direction or don't like a regulated plan. Sometimes we need to accomplish what they're there to accomplish with a much more flexible component, because otherwise they're not going to do it at all. Next. It's addressing treatments, lifestyle recommendations, trauma, nutrition. I mean, so much. If people wanted to do, I mean, I used to teach it at the naturopathic college as a continuing education credit. Okay. And again, my approach very different. I mean, basically the questions I would get from the naturopaths was like, well, how do you know if it's the third or fourth thoracic vertebrae? Quite truthfully, I don't actually care if it's the third or fourth thoracic vertebrae. I care more about the etiology, which means what broke down the body that led to the vertebrae getting out of alignment and the person being in all this pain to me is more important. I went off and my own losses in my own personal history, but I would say to you that the majority of all the eyes that I've done, and I've done thousands upon thousands of eyes, I would say that the biggest, the technical term is etiology, what broke the camel's back, or where does the breakdown of the body come from? It usually is some form of abandonment. It's grief. Okay, next. Okay. Should we do Veronica's eyes?
Boy, I'm up on deck, am I?
Yeah, you are.
All right, let me stop that share and bring up those photos. Which eye do you want to do first?
We'll start with the right. I see what we have.
Okay. All right. There's my right eyeball.
All right. So what do you think? What have you learned so far about it? What do you think?
What do y'all think about me?
Melanie, she knows iridology. Tell her what stands out for her.
She knows me pretty well too.
Mm-hmm.
Anything stand out to any of you folks from those different personality types? Those
The
stress
lines.
lines.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Andrea. There's a lot of orange around the pupil. So what do we know about the orange? Gut health, candida, fungus, pathogens, pre-diabetic predisposition, the family tree, catalyst, absolutely. But we also have the fiber really, really close together. So we have, we've got that humanitarian variable. Those transparent lines are the stress rings. Yes, I know somebody mentioned lots of stress rings. The other one that we didn't talk about is, see that dark pigmentation at the edge of the eye? Go to the very edge right there. That dark pigmentation it can be regarded as, the question would be, do you have skin breakouts? It can also indicate buildup of metal toxicity or environmental toxins.
Yeah, so both of those would apply to me. I've always struggled with breakouts despite, doing all the things that I should be doing. But also toxicity, especially in the last little while, has been an issue, which also relates to what you said about the orange pigmentation. We bought a house that was full of mold. So I've been doing my own protocols, trying to get all of those different mycotoxins out of my system.
The other one that I also want to touch on that I did not mention is that orange pigmentation directly around the pupil is indicative of keeping things inside. It may be an element. I would often say to the client, people perceive you as an extrovert, but what's really sacred to you, it stays inside, or you may not even speak about it. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think that's true. Definitely not an extrovert, although most people think that about me.
For sure, people would think you're an extrovert. I agree. Go to the 11 o'clock on the 11 o'clock with your little arrow right there. A little towards your the down more, that little brown dot. No, right there. And then see how go further out towards the edge. You've got two more little buttons there, those two little
Mhm.
dots. So again, all of that is that neck and shoulder area, and that comment about what was going on with his father.
And that
Okay.
definitely applies in my family.
Um. Okay. Let's go to 9 o'clock area. You've got a couple of lines through there, a couple of long ones. So disappointments, unmet expectations, males, family losses, a lot. Then you work your way down. Initially, you've got the arm right below right there. It's just okay. It's kind of it's almost like 8 o'clock. I'm gonna say. Go out, go out. Yeah, keep going, keep going. Yeah, keep going right there. Yeah, all of that is arm. See those three little dots there? That's arm. Anything with arm?
This is my right. So I dislocated my right shoulder when I was 18,
Oh, okay.
and it has been a problem for me ever since.
Wow. Okay, then work your way down a little bit more. I guess it's like 7. A little right there. That's it, right there. So that little area there is liver. But you see how subtle those little dots are. Okay, so in the traditional iridology system, that little hole there that you're looking at where we've got the arrows called a lacuna. In the Denny Ray Johnson system, it's called a pedal. Okay, so the delivery, pedal sounds so much nicer. Okay, work your way down a little bit more. Right there. Okay, so what do we got there? So that is the female organs. Ovary. Okay, so you can share if you want, or you can just pass. But that I would say that it would be about female hormones.
Yeah, I think not even so much hormonal, but you said ovary. I did have a cyst when
Okay.
I was 21 on the right ovary.
Okay.
And
Keep.
I ended up in a merge. Um, did not have a good experience there. I was sent home, but I found out years later through an ultrasound for something different that part of the ovary had actually blown off basically at that time. So I have a little missing chunk on that right
Wow.
ovary from where I had the cyst.
Okay, keep working down. So 6 o'clock, right
Okay.
there. Okay, so that is a really important one. That 6 o'clock is the leg.
Mhm.
Okay.
This was this was one when I mentioned that Alex and I met already, and she asked me, she said, "What happened to your legs?" And I was like, "Nothing happened to my legs. They're completely fine." Last year, I dislocated my right knee and I dislocated my left hip. Two like freak accidents 1 month apart, completely out of my mind already, and it had only been a year. So I was a perfect example of those clients who just willfully ignore things that are going on in their
We're-
bodies.
We forget, we just put it aside. Okay, but that 6 o'clock is a really important position because it also signifies self-esteem.
Mm.
So the question that I might sometimes, the way I may word it is, would you have wanted more validation from father, or did you get validation but you didn't take it in?
Mm. I feel like the second one is more applicable to me. I have
Okay.
a hard time believing when people tell me good things about myself.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm saying the 6 o'clock has a lot of aspects. So we've got the leg, we've got the self-esteem, and we also have the piece about, the person would excel in some form of sports of movement, some form of movement activity, whether it's dance or tennis or something. Did you do anything with sports or
Not
dance?
really. I never thought of myself as a very athletic person, but I do love to dance.
Okay.
Whenever I
All
get the
right.
opportunity, I'm the first one on the dance floor.
Okay. Okay. Keep going around the circle. Okay. Right there. Down a little bit, over the other way. Beep, right there. Yeah.
This guy.
So there we've got the kidney. Okay, so we've got a little weakness with the kidney, which is not surprising if we've got that pre-diabetic predisposition in the genetics. So, okay. Next one over, we've got, move over a little bit. Yep, right there. So there we've got, vagina, bladder, uterus, prostate if it was male. Okay. Keep going further over. Move over. Keep going a little more right there. Okay. So there we're into the back stuff. All that is back.
Mhm.
Okay. Keep going around the circle and keep going over to 3 o'clock. And I'm saying that is probably the most popular zone is that whole 3 o'clock here, further up a little bit more. Keep going up one more right there. All that is thyroid. Thyroid is the biggest component, I'm going to say to you, in both men and women. Okay. I actually did I did three researches, but my first research that I did when I got my PhD in the homeopathy piece was actually on thyroid. Okay. I used to do a lot of volunteer work with the Deaf Children's Association of Ontario. Okay. So anyway, the families used to come see me pro bono. So there was a family that used to come down from Sudbury or somewhere up there, North Bay or whatever. And all four of them were significantly obese. Okay. All four showed up. We have mom and dad and the, boy and girl, both deaf. And all four of them, interesting enough, they all had really bad coughs and flus. And this is years before COVID was a word on our vocabulary. All right. Um, and I gave them the homeopathic remedy for cough, which is spongia. Sponge. It's from the sea. It's like it's like kelp. To say sponge, right? And when they came back to see me 2-3 months later, it was quite fascinating that all four of them had lost anywhere between 10 to 15 pounds with no effort. So I did this first research study as part of my homeopathic PhD that I got. I went to the YMCA and I requested 50 volunteers to be part of my research. I did it all by the book. 25 of them got sponge and the other 25 got a placebo. And the rules were they were not to change how they ate or how they lived. All the other variables would stay the same. And absolutely, the 25 that got spongia between January to June, they all lost 20 to 25 pounds. Okay.
Wow.
But again, it's this underlying factor with the thyroid that I'm saying. I truthfully believe 99% of all population has issues with the thyroid.
And I
Okay.
certainly do in my family. And I don't know if we talked about this when you and I met previously, but years ago I had a brain injury. And then sometime after that brain injury, I had an injury to my neck at the chiropractor, actually. Ended up in a merge, had a CT scan to check on my neck, and they gave me an iodine dye, and I ended up with a goiter. And ever since then, I have to try really hard to keep my thyroid in check and balanced and everything functioning the way that it should.
Somebody requested on the
Yeah.
chat what potency. You could use 6, 12, or 30. They would all be fine. And you want to do it first thing when you wake up in the morning. Nutritionally, we use iodine. I can think of like the Genestra iodine that tastes quite nice. I mean, the other one that I was taught through, I don't know if I got it from IHN or where that you can actually get iodine from the drugstore and put it on the inner elbow. Do you know that one?
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how it sucks it up immediately. But I truthfully probably find the spongia to be far more effective. Okay. Okay, keep going around the circle. Okay, so we're 3 o'clock. Keep going. Just adjacent. Just go back a tad there. So again, there I would say, is there any I can't think of the right word, tension or difficulty swallow? It's the throat. Anything with the throat.
I do have a lot of tension under, like right under my chin and into the throat. And recently have learned that I have a tongue tie. that I never knew I had, which attaches down just below my hyoid bone.
Okay, so that's right there.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going around. Okay, so there we've got like the lower jaw, then we're into the nose, the forehead, okay, and then the upper portion, the kind of like from, I'm gonna say, it kind of runs from like it'll be 2 to 10, all that upper portion is considered the brain, what goes on in the brain. There's not a lot of information. I mean, the only one that I really know is right there where you are right now. 12 o'clock is called the animation line. Okay. The animation line right there, you've got that right there where you are. Perfect, Veronica. That little dot there. I would say when you see how there's a high concentration of color there at 12 o'clock, that is telling me that something happened. It may not have happened to you directly. It may have happened in the dynamics of the family, the extended family, but it affected the individual at a very deep subconscious level as far as trauma. And it may contribute to the person being challenged with things like procrastination or depression for no reason, or just getting discouraged for, it kind of undermines them behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely have a history with a lot of trauma in it. I often joke that I've lived a very long life for my age. So I can certainly see where trauma would play a factor for me. Procrastination, I feel like not so much anymore, but definitely when I was younger, I tended towards that. And not so much depression, but anxiety. Huge amounts of clinically significant anxiety, especially when I was younger.
Thank you, Veronica, for your transparency and putting yourself out there with the group. It helps.
I always say I'm a pretty open book, so.
Go to the blue, see that little blue shadow at the edge of the eye?
These guys over here?
No, right outside the pupil, all the way to the
Oh,
bottom. You see it more all the way in the bottom. Go to the bottom, keep going. It's my right. Keep going up the
this
other
way?
way. The other way.
Okay.
See that blue right there?
Oh, this part.
Yeah, further down you have more blue there in the corner. That blue is regarded as the traditional interpretation was that it's a calcium deficiency. I tend to use it more as a generic mineral deficiency. Okay. The other one that we didn't talk about is the orange pigmentation. Go back up to that.
Sure.
So we're doing the right. So go over to 9 o'clock. Right, 9 o'clock. So that area represents the ascending colon. And then if you go to the top, all the way across, that would be the transverse colon. And then if you come down, all that area represents the small intestine. So that'd be the ileum and jejunum. And then all the way at the bottom is the cecum. Okay. So in your case, the area that needs the most work is the transverse colon. Look at all those markings up there. Some good, castor oil, abdominal massage. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a look at our other picture.
There we go.
All right, so let's see what we got. Do we have any participants that would like to take this on? I do want to point out, and I'm sorry to say, see those how some of those the nerve rings, some of them are brown. So
Yes.
again, remember, we're reading color. White is acute, white is a warning, yellow's acute. The brown is becoming, hey, stress is a huge factor. And you've shared with,
I just wanted to
us
say, yeah, when you say the nerve rings, just for everyone who isn't so familiar, if you're looking at the outside of this eye, it almost looks like the rings of a tree with the blue or greener color, and then the brown rings.
Yeah.
So those just indicate very high stress.
Yes.
Sabine would like to know why I'm so stressed.
Well, I know you've shared. I mean, hey, I'm going through the moving thing too, and it's insane. I think like when a move happens, it's like everything that can go wrong multiplied 10 times.
Yeah. The
right?
last 5 years of my life in particular have been a lot, like very busy, multiple traumas, everything that could go wrong has, as you said. This house that we moved into last year, we ended up basically tearing it down and having to rebuild it because of the extent of the mold
The
that we
the
found.
fungus.
Yeah. And so it's been a lot of challenges, people in my life being very sick and doing lots of caregiving. But I will say I have I should have brought them here, but I have pictures of my eyes from 10 years ago.
Wow.
And this is actually better.
Wow, that's
My
awesome.
eyes used to be almost entirely brown, with just a little bit of green around the outside. So the difference between 10 years ago and now, my eyes actually a lot cleaner.
And certainly, absolutely, yes. The stress lines, we may see Veronica next year at this time, and those brown lines may be white, and maybe right now she's got one, two, one, two. We got three and a half, four.
Mhm.
Maybe there might be all gone, or maybe we've only got one or two. Oh no, it changes. Absolutely, it changes. Do we have anybody else that sees anything in there that really stands out for them? Please, let's have some participants.
Yeah.
We've got the same pattern with that transverse colon, eh?
Mhm.
Okay. We've talked about the nerve rings. We've got the blue shadow,
These were the ones that I noticed.
yes, which
These
again,
guys.
it's that traumas. That's all the trauma stuff from childhood. The dark red lines on top. Yes, absolutely. Yes, agree. Yeah. The orange in the top half. Yeah, it's that whole transverse colon piece. Take a look at that concentration of white lines at again 9 o'clock for the left eye. Again, all of that. We're back into thyroid. Okay.
Two dark markers at 4 or 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. 5
Do you
o'clock.
mean Sabine, these guys?
Is that the ones there?
Just above that. Oh, okay. These little petally guys.
Yeah. So all of that would be. We're back into cecum.
Mhm. And Melanie said the little freckle close to midway around 4 o'clock. Is that this guy? Or maybe this one too.
Have you ever had colonics?
No, but I used to do enemas very regularly.
Okay. Um, I love colonics. I swear by them and absolutely do the enemas too. But there was nothing like a cecum release. Okay, when you get the cecum release, it's like it's warm, hot liquid that comes out. The cecum, it fills up with all this crap, and it not you could have tons of colonics and actually never have a cecum release, but the cecum release is amazing.
Mm. Everybody
And
wants
yet,
to know about this little dark spot at 4 p.m.
which one are we on? In
I
the
think I think we might be talking about this little tiny.
hold on, we're in the left eye. Where are you? Right there?
Yeah,
Yes,
this
right there.
little spot.
Okay, it's the thing about the eye. Sometimes the chart or the kind of like the clock doesn't always line up completely. So there we can go two ways. It could be it's right between, again, we're back into the arm and the hand and the shoulder, the whole thing with the arm that we had in the other eye. I think it probably is the spleen.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, you've got the diaphragm.
Okay.
I think it's spleen is my feel.
Hmm.
Okay. The spleen, I'm glad Melanie and several people brought that up. The spleen has a very fascinating psychospiritual aspect to it. The spleen signifies the psychospiritual meaning of when there's a marking in the spleen area means, the question is, to your knowledge, was there significant stressors on your mother when she was pregnant with you?
She's here. Should we ask her? But yes, I would imagine so. There were some significant events in her life
Okay.
at that time.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's the such spiritual aspect of the spleen. All right.
Okay.
Again, we've got a lot of markings through the the 3 o'clock. That's the chest, and in the left eye we've got the heart. Okay. We've got, again, that's the ribs. People doesn't look. Yeah, we haven't talked about the pupil. If I couldn't read the second half of that chat, the pupil doesn't look what, completely round, or
Completely round. Yeah. Have a look.
again, there's a whole thing on the shape of the pupil. If the top is flat, if the sides are flat, and the bottom is flat, it basically is all about, it's all about trauma, different aspects of trauma. Okay.
Okay. I'd never heard that before.
I'll dig them out. I'm away right now, but I will dig it out, and, well, I mean, I can send it to you, and you can send it to the group,
Of
whether
course.
they, whatever, whether we do a course or not, whatever. I'm happy to share my knowledge. But
Mhm.
the pupil thing is fascinating, depending whether it's flat on top or on either side or the bottom. Melanie, I find sometimes spleen is, what does she say?
Lack of control.
The spleen, yeah, yeah, the psychospiritual and the spleen is lack of life balance also. It's a very ambivalent one. I mean, it certainly comes up with me when I do my I go for acupuncture. I mean, I know my spleen is, it's always been a big one for me.
Mhm.
I mean, what's interesting with you is that you're not showing a lot of lymphatic congestion. I mean, we down here at 6 o'clock, we got some blood right there. Go to the other side, the other way. Beep. It's getting, go down. It's getting a little blurred there. See right there at the
Mhm.
bottom. So we're getting some congestion, lymphatic wise there.
Okay. What if lines cross into the pupil? It looks like it washes into the pupil. I don't know what you mean by that, Sabine. Do you know how to interpret that question? Alex, what
No,
if
I
lines
don't.
not in
No, I
my
don't.
eyes? Just curious.
Nope, no. I
No.
mean, there is a defining edge to the pupil.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, your other variable is that, if the closer again, we're reading it like the lines of the tree. The closer the mark is to the pupil, the events happened, closer to birth. Like I'm saying,
Mhm.
we take the distance from the pupil to the edge of the eye, and let's say you're 40, and you divide, these are the first 20 years of your life, and then the second half is the last 20 years. Because I'll look at a marking, let's say, especially when I'm dealing with grief, and I'll, the story I told you, I would say, we had 3 markings in the first 10 years of life, which is basically significant, parent lack of, or abandonment, or whatever. And then further on would be different losses. I mean, I can sit there and count them. I can think of so many clients I've had. I'll say there's been 6 significant losses. Oh, I've got this dear little fellow. I mean, it was like, I'm just like, I pick up strays along the way. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, I was at a regular store I go to, and we got chatting about what I do. And anyway, he's like, well, blah, 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 I have nothing. I said, look, just come see me. I'll do your eyes. I'll help you, whatever. I say, oh my God. I said, you've had 6 losses in the last, like, 10 years. It was horrific. It was just, like, absolutely horrific. I mean, and when you're dealing with people where whoever, whether it's a parent or a loved one or a partner, that commits suicide, oh my God, the wound is so deep. Yeah, so that was the scenario with this young man. The father commits suicide, and then the mother gets stage 4 cancer, and he's taking care of her, and then she dies, and then the baby dies, and oh, it's just. But I'm saying you can actually count those little markings that tell you how many, and they were all like in the last 10 years.
Wow. Louise asked, do you treat those losses with homeopathy?
100%, yes. And I am taking the most incredible course after all these years of all the amount I've done it. I always keep growing and learning. It is, I'm taking a homeopathic doctorate course from the University of Homeopathy in Paris, France. Okay. It's 2 weekends a month for a year.
Wow.
And it's a complete different approach from the way I have ever practiced homeopathy, I'll tell you. And because their audience is strictly only medical doctors. We have 88 doctors in the course, and the majority of the participants in the course are pediatricians, and their comments are things like, how many more times can I give Johnny another antibiotic? I mean, he's been in here 6 times in the last 3 months. So it teaches how to discern the remedy pretty well in 30 seconds. I mean, we spent September, October, November, December studying mucus. Okay, every type of mucus. Is it stringy? Is it clear? Is it white? Is it yellow? Is it green? Is it bloody? Is it in the morning? Is it at night? And you memorize the amount of remedies. I mean, there's like 75 different remedies from mucus. Okay. So I'm saying, I see Johnny, and it's not the way we do things, but as medical doctor, the medical doctor will probably spend 10 minutes with him, and she will know within 10 minutes what the remedy is, and it's working for them. So it's a whole new revolution on bringing homeopathy to the medical front, basically. But I'm loving it. Last weekend and this weekend, we're on hormones, gynecology. So every month we have a different topic. The other one that I did during our terrible COVID years, oh my God, that was such an incredible educational accomplishment. Was I did the curriculum from University of Toronto Medical School. I'm a diabetic educator, and boy, was that a wake-up call. I mean, to me, diabetic, this is great. I'll learn how to help diabetics, blah, blah, blah. I would say to you that the curriculum of the program, again, the audience is medical, okay? The content, 80% of the content of the diabetic educator program is not about food, it's not about exercise. It's about the 300 different diabetic medications. Mm-hmm. Which are, I was completely disconnected from. You also have to know every other medication for blood pressure and cardiovascular disease and neuropathy and everything else. I mean, it started in September. By January, I told my instructor, I said, this is, there's no way. This is way too much for me. It's not my world. And she said to me, hang in there, Alex. I believe in you. She says, I will coach you every weekend and we will get through this. And she did. She didn't want any money for it. And I finished with an A-.
Wow.
Wow.
We do have one question that has come into the Q&A box, but
tell me.
Do you want to get to that now, or was there anything else that you specifically wanted to cover?
Sure. No, let's do the question.
Sure. So it's asking if you could go back and clarify a little more about using the iris as that timeline, how that works, how you read it as a timeline. And when I read that, I was thinking, when we met previously, there was a few things that you had said, like, oh, what happened at 10 or 11 years old? And you nailed everything. So I don't know if there's an example even in my eye that you could show some of that timeline work.
Well, I've got a guy who's in really, really deep therapy based on that variable. So basically, look at your concentration of those deep orange markings that people have right there, that people keep pointing out. I would say to you that the deepest root of trauma for you was basically, it's just the numbers. It's 10 to 12.
Okay. And
it's the clock.
And okay, so just from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I do it. Yeah.
And another question here, is it 2 o'clock that refers to mother's relationship with her mother?
2 o'clock. Yes, it does. Correct.
Okay.
Got it.
And can you, what was that about again?
Again, the question would be, do you know anything about any tensions or unresolved issues between your mother and her mother?
Right.
And then if you flip over to the other side, over by it would be It's around 11 o'clock right there. 11 o'clock. That would be, what do you know about your mother's relationship with her father? Okay.
Sabine is asking, do you think that having an iridologist on staff at an optometrist office would be a great benefit? I went to my optometrist for blurry vision and my eyes were fine from her end, but she had no idea what else could go on.
I'm very, very good friends with my personal optometrist. He is a great fan he's a great fan of homeopathy. He thinks iridology is crap, even though he did come to see me when he went to Africa, and for almost 6 months he had uncontrollable diarrhea. They could not find what was wrong with him. So I said to him, sorry, Bernie, but I got to look at your eye. And of course, we had parasite infestations galore. He says, I'll pretend you're not looking at my eye. He says, because you're shaking up my foundation. I would say optometrists don't believe in iridology at all. No.
Yeah, and I do find it fascinating how the eye changes.
I know.
And still that they dismiss it. And like I said, I wish I should have brought my eye photos from 10 years ago. They're remarkably different. Like to look at them side by side, it doesn't even look like it came from the same person.
The concept with the eyes changing is a very controversial point, and considering that your eyes become your number one tool when you're going through customs. And I got a Nexus card. It's they use your eyes outside them. So if my eye changes too radically, they won't let me in or something.
That's a good point.
I think the changes are so subtle that their instruments don't pick up on it.
Okay.
Like, let's say, for example, in your case, you would lose the nerve rings.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the tissue is pretty well the same. Okay, what does Melanie say? I did have an optometrist come to see her.
Yeah, I did have an optometrist come to see me to learn what they could look for in the eyes.
Oh, nice, good.
And actually, when I was going through at IHN, one of my classmates was an optometrist going back to school.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's wonderful. It's slow, but it's coming around.
Yeah. I have another question sent in here. Jessica said, can you clarify the reason why the eye shows symptoms of the body tissues and organs, etc.? Is it because of nerves extending into the eye from that organ, or what's the explanation?
Correct. Yes. I hate to say it. I used to have a King Shepherd who tackled me in the park one day and threw me in the air, and I broke the fall with the right arm. I put my arm down, and the wrist went, and I went to the mirror immediately when I got home. I went to the hospital. When I got home, I looked in the mirror, and there was the black line, just like the owl. It was immediate.
Wow.
The other one that's absolutely scary is, back in my young years when I was starting out, sometimes, people would have like a little, girls party, and they'd have me come and I'd do people's eyes. Okay. And I remember the lady, the young woman that was hosting the event, she said, I'll go first. I said, well, I've kind of glimpsed at your eyes. I think we'd rather go private, and I'll do you in the kitchen. Oh no, she says, everybody knows everything about me. What I'm going to tell you, nobody knows. We went in the kitchen. I said, do they know about your 2 abortions? No. Wow. Especially yeah. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, I know when we met, I'll say for everyone here, Alex and I met before we did this live, just to make sure that there wasn't going to be something that would come out that I wasn't comfortable talking about. I can't think of anything. But then also she asked me lots of questions that I had to think really hard to dig down deep into those different traumas. And the question about 10 to 11 years old, I had a hard time thinking of what did happen when I was 10 or 11 years old. So it can be really telling, and you nailed so many things that even I wasn't consciously aware of.
I mean, the other variable, the combination of, in my case, and that person that's the homeopath, you don't actually ever have to remember what it is. The homeopathic remedy will deal with it.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a good point.
The other tip that I'll give you guys is, if you use the Biomed out in Vancouver. They've got the homeopathic chakra drops. Are you familiar with those?
Mhm.
Okay. If you use those drops, they will, I have never had anybody it doesn't work for. You will have a dream and it will bring up everything in those dreams, even people that don't dream.
All right. Any other questions that you folks have? Oh, one just popped up.
Yep.
Um, you mentioned emotional iridology versus what is the other form of the practice?
Physical. I would say for the majority of iridology, it's all physical. That would be the Bernard Jensen school, the
Mhm.
European school. They're strictly physical, just strictly physical. So Denny Ray Johnson came along and said, "Hey, this is just too depressing. We've got to give people some positive. Like, let's talk about your gifts. You're a dancer, you're a writer, you're a singer, you're a musician. I mean, your eye has all of that information as far as your potential gifts that you're born with. You want to build the person up. You don't want them leaving there kind of like, ooh, okay, discouraged."
I will say, I got that from our first meeting as well. I know we talked about, a lot of the genetic predispositions and what was showing as issues in my eye and the trauma history and all of that. But you had also made a comment, something along the lines of that I'm probably in the best place that I've ever been,
Yes.
despite like I'm the calm in the storm right now. And I
Yep.
definitely feel that in my life. And it was really reassuring to hear that my eyes were telling that story too, that, yeah, I have done a lot of work and I have gotten to
It
a better
shows.
place.
It
Yeah.
shows. Yep.
So I love you saying that. And it kind of ties back to what you said earlier about using iridology in a nutritional practice as a way to build that rapport with your clients, right? It gets so deep so quickly.
It's almost like within the first visit, it's as if I've known the person for maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, 5 years.
Yeah.
And the trust and connection is extraordinary.
Does anyone else, I'm going to ask, anyone else have any questions about my eyeball in particular? Otherwise, I'll take it down and we can have just Alex up on the screen a little bit bigger. Okay, so Jessica's asking here, what if we want to add this to our practice? How do we study this? I think you touched a little bit earlier about a course offering, but do you want to go into a little bit more detail about that?
I mean, it's, and I'm happy to, I mean, my style is very, can't think of what this, it's very different. I mean, IHN offers a very formal iridology program. It's very formal. Okay. I'm saying I've had tons of students that I've taught, like, I mean, tons over the years. All right. It's more of a one-to-one. We'll do all the physical iridology, how to read it, how to identify the signs, and then all the treasures as far as all the emotional little markings. I when I made that up, I forget. Well, what did we say? I think it was 4 sessions.
Yeah, so Alex has
I
offered to
can look it up.
do a little mini course, I guess. So
Yeah.
let me see. I'll stop sharing my eye. I can bring up that slide again. Here we go. So you said 4-part series, parts 1, 2, and 3 will be 2 hours per session. Part 1, like you said, was the physical iridology part, which is those markings, the fibers, the map, how to interpret that, learn to read the rings. Session 2 being the emotional iridology side of things. Part 3, how to help your clients heal and move forward. And then part 4 would be case studies with you each presenting your own to the group. And the cost for that program for each person would be $180. So that as well is something that we'll share along with the replay. So if any of you are interested in learning more about iridology, then that would be an opportunity for you to get in on this little mini course.
I mean, it's fantastic in the way of, I can think of, like, let's say, I mean, I actually learned it, both I studied in Germany and Toronto through one of the IHM programs, the live blood cell. You know what? I wasn't prepared to get a microscope. It's a huge investment. And again, it's just looking at the physical aspect. Here you're going so much deeper. You're actually seeing the soul. Okay.
Love that.
And learning, and learning the personality styles is fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it tells you a lot about the strategy that you need to use with that
Correct. Correct.
client.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, we are coming up towards the end of our
Yes,
2 hour
we are.
period. That time has flown by. So I just want to put out one more invitation. If anyone has any questions, either about the physical aspects, reading the markings, how to learn more, anything to do with my eyeball, we can pull that back up. And we can use that last little bit of time. Otherwise, I don't mind don't mind leaving it at an hour 45 because that was already a lot of information.
We don't have technical dates for the course. It would be basically, if people are interested, then we can figure out dates that work for people.
Well, it looks like that's bringing us to the end of our time then. If there's no more questions for all of our group members, those who are here live and those who might be watching on the replay, to be in touch if they're interested in taking a course with you as well. I think I will say years ago, I don't even know how many years ago now, but I feel like it's almost 10. I did a 4-part series with Alex to learn more about
Yes.
iridology, and it is such a wonderful tool to have. And even just for me to be able to monitor my own health, or for the children in my life to be able to see what's going on in their eyes, even if you aren't using it in practice, although it's very useful for that, I also find just having that knowledge for ourselves can be really, really useful in making sure that we have the best health that we can. So it was a nice time for self-reflection, and definitely learned a lot. So I would encourage those of you who are interested to learn more to jump in on that offer.
Thank you for having me. Namaste.
Yes,
Blessings,
thank you for
health,
being
and
here.
wisdom to all. Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you
Have a
so
good night,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
All right.